Welcome back to the Extra Rep Podcast, guys. I'm Josh.
I'm Liam.
So today is going to be talking all about the role of pre, intra, and post-workout nutrition. So I think that window, 2 to 3 hours before, 2 to 3 hours after, a good probably 6-hour window around when you're going to train. We're going to talk about how to optimize this basically as much as possible. So we're obviously going to talk about the role of the pre-post-workout nutrition. We'll explain briefly the anabolic window. Is it a myth? Is it something you need? We'll obviously talk about what happens if you are training fasted or if you skip a meal for whatever reason. We want to talk more about the best foods for pre-post workout, easily digested, things like that. And then we're obviously going to talk a little bit about supplementation at the end, and if there's any little tips and tricks that we can give you around that window to, I guess, give you the best result possible. So Liam, first place to start is always, when we're talking about pre-workout nutrition, why is it so important before we train?
We need fuel to train. It's as simple as that. And look, yes, you can have a really heavy carb meal the night before, but that can impact other things like sleep. But we want to make sure we've got fuel in our system because we're going to be driving performance. When we're looking for muscle growth, we're looking to actually progressively overload. So go a little bit heavier than your previous lift in the gym. So that will require performance, energy, the mental state, the focus, everything that you need, because when you're pushing those numbers, it requires something from you. And that could be, as you've heard of, like your soul, like sometimes some sets just take your soul if you're going for a back squat PB, but at the same time, it's going to require a lot of nutrients.
Yeah. And I think if you're going to come in under recovered to a session and you're training hard, you will really notice a difference. I've got so many clients who come to me and go, oh, geez, I'm just not feeling it today. And it's generally the first question I'll ask aside from their sleep is, okay, did you have anything before you came? And most of the time the answer is like, oh, I've actually eaten nothing, or I had like a glass of water, or, I've had half an apple or something like that. So it is something that, is really important. So for most of my clients, I'll say if you can get 50 grams of carbs in pre-workout, 30 to 50 grams, depending on how many calories they have throughout the day, of course, as well. And when they're training, I find that's a really, really good place to start, especially when we're talking pre-workout nutrition.
Yep. It's just really important in general, just nutrition around the workout. I think that should be the most important time of nutrition a day, pre and post. Just make sure you've got food around the session.
Yeah, I think around the session, and you think about what you're doing, it's like, you're really, you're almost emptying, everything out of the tank when you're doing this sort of stuff. So I think the more glycogen you have, obviously we use glycogen as ATP when we're going to push heavy sets in the gym. So it makes sense. The more you have in there, of course there's going to be a limit, but generally speaking, if you have enough, that's going to get you through that workout. Whereas if you're relying on potentially yesterday's dinner, yes, you may get away with it from time to time, of course, but when we're looking at optimal performance, it really is, almost essential to have that sort of thing as well. Intra-workout, what would you say, would you say it's actually important for someone? Because I find, for example, a beginner, I wouldn't bother with intra-workout nutrition, but as you become more advanced, I find it just becomes that little bit more important.
Well, I'll just touch quickly on what you mentioned before. For those people at home that don't know, ATP converts to energy. So ATP just means the more ATP we have, the more energy we have. That's what Josh meant by the glucose converting into ATP. But in terms of intra-workout, the only time I see it actually really important is if someone's actually on a cut and their workouts and performance is starting to suffer. That's the only time I actually ever see it really necessary. Unless someone is really trying to go on a bulk, which again, we can touch on that. I'm not a big fan of bulking. But if someone's really trying to push calories and they find it hard to eat, then liquid carbohydrates in the middle of a session can really help.
Yeah, I think around your training window, like you said, if you're on a cut, you're obviously going to have less calories to play with.
Yeah.
And obviously something, we'll talk about supplements, but we know that caffeine, electrolytes, those two are probably going to be your two big ones, pre and during training, to get you, that extra bit, especially like I said, if you're deep in a diet, you don't have, I guess, much to play with in terms of the calorie content. You're starting to fatigue, you're starting to feel the effects, doubling up your caffeine over those last 2 weeks of your cut or something could probably be a really useful strategy. And again, making sure the electrolytes are there. But then, like you said, on the flip side, bulking, it's really easy to, just add more carb powders, add more shakes, add more electrolytes, into that, I've seen people who probably have 150 grams of carbs like in their intra-workout shake. Which, is it needed? Probably not, depends on your situation, but it is a really easy way to get those carbs in. And I think, like, let's say if we're splitting this up, say if we're having 150 grams of carbs intra-workout or 150 grams of carbs late at night, obviously let's equate the calories. The carbs straight away, in that intra-workout are probably going to do a better job of fueling you and potentially just doing a better job in terms of that body composition, I would say, as well.
We're talking 600 calories there. Like,
Exactly.
No one needs to be consuming 600 calories during their work. Well, look, some people may, if they're doing this professionally and it's like their job. But really, 150 grams of carbs, like, I'm just thinking of the gastrointestinal stress of you're in a stress state training, then you're trying to absorb the carbs quickly, and then you're trying to max out on a lift. I can't see it ending too well.
Yeah. And I think, that takes us basically to post-workout nutrition. So I think a lot of people, it's probably not as important as pre-workout nutrition, like we discussed on the previous podcast, but it doesn't mean it's not important. So it's probably, we'll say, the second most important meal potentially of the day, depending on, again, there's going to be 100 factors, but if we're talking pre, intra, post, I would always say pre first, post second, intra third.
Yeah.
It's probably a good hierarchy to have. But how do you think that affects, well, I guess, how does post-workout nutrition affect, muscle growth, recovery, protein synthesis, all that sort of stuff?
Well, the hard thing is it actually really depends on those two factors. It depends what you had in your pre-workout meal, because if you had a quick pre-workout meal, then you went straight to training and you've consumed EAAs or carbs during your training, you don't really need to worry about a post-workout meal for about 2 to 3 hours. But also time of the day, like if you've trained at like 5 p.m. at night and your pre-workout meal was your lunch at 1 o'clock, then it actually becomes essential to get that post-workout meal in.
Yeah, I think timing's just a big thing that people, again, just don't really factor in as something that's important. And that's, of course, because we've got jobs, we've got lives, people going to work after the gym, they're not thinking at 3:30, I need to get my, my whey protein in with a banana and an apple or whatever their pre-workout may be. But it is very important. And I've had clients where same sort of thing, if they're like, I'll have lunch and then I'll go to the gym at 5. Yeah. And I'll be like, that's sweet, but I think we need something else there. It doesn't have to be, like I said, a big meal, but some protein, some form of carbs there, quick acting, getting you into the gym, getting into that mindset as well of like, okay, I'm starting to fuel myself because I'm going to push myself here for that workout as well. So I do find mentally that may help people as well. If you have a quote unquote pre-workout meal, that's going to motivate you to be like, okay, I've just had this to fuel my session. So that will lead you to want to go in and, train with that intensity that you need to change your body.
Yeah. But like we said, it depends on how big the meal was. If it was just an apple or a banana, which is perfectly acceptable as a pre-workout meal, then you probably need to focus on that anabolic window after and get the post-workout meal in. But if you've had a really big meal and then you've trained, you might even notice that you're not even hungry after you finish training. And that anabolism of that hunger, that ghrelin spike, it won't even come in until about like an hour or 2 hours later.
Yeah. I think going back to the sort of, I guess we call it the anabolic window, there has been some research lately to show that, it may not be, like I said in the last podcast, as important as it once was, but that doesn't mean it's not important at all. And especially when, I guess, if you think about training, you think about it like a switch. Like the training turns the switch on for, muscle and body composition. You could not train and just obviously lose fat on a diet, but you're probably going to lose a bit of muscle as well, even though protein's high. So you really need to think about flicking that switch, training hard enough for then, this pre-post intra-workout stuff to actually make a difference as well.
Yep. I mean, training intensity, as you mentioned there, training hard enough comes into play with how many calories you do need to be eating and how much is going to be uptanked nutriently from, is that even a word?
Nutriently, maybe.
Nutrition gets uptaked regularly, I think that's what I was trying to say, into that muscle cell.
Yeah. And I think when we talk about training fasted, because I know there are a lot of people who potentially do get up first thing in the morning. Like I said, we talked briefly about it in the last podcast, but you mentioned honey, coffee, banana?
Honey, coffee, banana.
So why does that work?
It just works so well for the quick absorption of the carbohydrates. It gives you energy. You don't get the big crash. It's literally 125 calories, if that. And also the coffee will just help with energy production. ATP, as we mentioned before, helps also aid with blood flow. So you're going to get a better pump. And no, coffee doesn't dehydrate you, by the way. So if you're just having a long black, you're also hydrating yourself because you've got water in there as well. And then you've got nutrients as well with the banana and honey. It just works so well. It's so light on the stomach. Even if someone's not hungry, they can usually, while they're driving to the gym, just eat a banana. There's no barrier to entry with this. That's why it's so easy for someone. And it's literally 125 calories, so it doesn't blow out your calories for the rest of the day. You can still have 2,000 rest later in the day when you're hungry or whatever, and your performance will increase in the gym.
Yeah. I think it's like I said, something fast digesting, carbohydrate, bit of protein. If you can get that in any form, that's going to be a really great start if you do normally train fasted. What about, would you say, if you missed, say you missed a post-workout meal, if you miss one post-workout meal, is that going to be my gains are done for the day? Or is that it's fine as long as your protein's there and you consume enough calories throughout the day?
Well, you just answered it in your own question. As long as there's enough protein and calories throughout the rest of the day, you've got nothing really to worry about.
Yeah.
Look, is it ideal? I would still say no. It's probably better from a nutrient partitioning standpoint to get something in after. But the days of the anabolic window and the second you finish that last set, you have to get your 30 grams shaken down it, those days are gone.
Yeah, I think it comes down to personal preference as well. Again, like I said, if you're an elite bodybuilder, a bit of a different story, and you probably wouldn't be listening to this podcast yet. We're not quite big enough. But if you're someone, like I said, average Joe, just looking to get a bit stronger, a bit leaner, etc., still having something post workout, ideally in that window. But if you miss a day, it's not going to be the end of the world. I just wouldn't turn that into, missing every day there. Ideally, we still want to get something in pre and post. Protein and carbs, like we talked about, carbs are really going to help fuel that process of training harder. And obviously protein, the more we have there, the carbs, we talked about, are protein sparing. So we're not going to be using that protein for energy. We're going to be using the carbs for energy. So that lets protein do its job of, repairing that muscle tissue and doing all the functions that we need to obviously improve our body composition as well. When we talk about post-workout meals, what would you say? Obviously, pre-workout, we talked about fast digesting carbs. So What would you say, 1 to 2 hours before, probably the faster digesting, would you say?
Well, yeah, but it depends on the person's time schedule and how much time they have to digest something.
Say they had, all the time in the world, the gym was the only thing they did for the day. What would be a perfect, pre-post workout, timing and meals for you?
Yeah, timing would be an hour and a half to 2 hours before the workout. That includes the caffeine and everything as well, just to let everything digest, settle, get into the stream, because then you do your workout for an hour. You've given your digestion about a 3 to 4 hour break there. Then your nutrient partitioning, because you'll be super insulin sensitive after the training, and also you've already metabolized all the food that you've eaten. So after about 4 hours, so let's just say, for example, you ate food at 8:30 in the morning. Then you trained at about 10:30 or 10:15, and you train for an hour and 15. You get home, it's been 3 hours, and it's 11:30 to 12. That'd be the perfect window to eat your next meal.
Yeah, I think that's pretty fair.
Yeah.
I guess the only thing I would really change, again, it's going to depend. In a perfect world, I'd probably at least 90 minutes. Yeah. And I would also preferably for me to have my caffeine probably at least half an hour before, half an hour to 45. The one thing I do find with a lot of people is they will have their caffeine or pre-workout as they're starting their first set at the gym. And I find obviously the effects are probably going to kick more in towards the end of your workout, which again, placebo as well, but can be obviously useful to finish your workout. But I'd much prefer my caffeine when I'm starting with generally the hardest or heaviest exercise of the workout, and have it all working in the right way. So that's the only thing I would really change there. In terms of food, again, it comes back to you and what you can digest. So for me, I can probably have rice 90 minutes before and be no problem. For someone else, they might just feel heavy and sluggish trying to do their sets if they had the same amount of rice I had. So it's just about finding what works for you at the end of the day. And like I said, getting, fats we sort of haven't talked about, but ideally, just because fat's slow digestion, we want to keep them more away from that sort of post workout window if possible.
Interesting.
Yeah. Don't agree with me?
No.
Why is that?
I consume 4 whole eggs every single morning before my training sessions, and I perform elite.
I think one thing I will mention is potentially having some fats pre-workout as well, because that is then going to obviously digest a bit slower and probably help you with a bit more fuel. But post-workout, I do like to keep fats probably 10 grams absolute max.
I mean,
because of that insulin spike as well.
Post-workout, they don't serve that much of a role. Like if you're doing a protein shake, like protein and fats, and carbohydrates is all that you really need.
And this is, again, guys, we're talking about like, to get this extra 2% of result here. Like we're not talking about, if we limit fats, that's all of a sudden going to be the game changer and you're going to start, piling on muscle and changing your body composition.
Fats play a huge hormonal role in the body, and then also from a satiation standpoint. So, I'm someone who has a big enough appetite as it is, so I find eating them in the morning just really helps me.
Yeah.
But it depends on the source as well. I'm eating rich omega-3 vitamin-rich fats from an egg yolk, compared to whatever.
Peanut butter.
Yeah, exactly. So they will have different responses in the body.
Yeah.
And I do eat them with high fiber rolls, so it slows down the digestion there as well. And yeah.
Like for example, my breakfast, guys, and it's normally, it tends to be almost a pre-workout meal, is normally half a tub of like the YoPro. I'll put some honey in there, some organic honey. I'll whack some chia seeds in there just for some fiber. And then it'll be some sort of, like cereal or grain or something, without a crazy amount. Again, if I have, for example, like too much, just right cereal or whatever cereal I decide to pick, same thing, digestion, upset, etc., can lead you to feel really sluggish. So I try and make sure that I'm not eating and then training straight away, leaving that, probably 90 minutes at least window. And that's where I sort of, I guess, feel and perform my best there. Post-workout will normally always just be like, your standard chicken, rice and veg really. I'll normally have that, an hour or two after. Or if I can't with clients, it'll literally just be a shake and a banana or something like that.
Yeah.
Potentially even some Allen snakes if I can get away with throwing one or two in, because I know that if I'm ever going to have one, a lolly, that's going to be the best time to have it, which is going to have the least effect, and when you're very insulin sensitive as well.
Exactly, and it's the best time to have it. I mean, there is this whole thing around antioxidants around post-workout. Don't consume them. Have you heard of that?
Yeah.
I honestly think it's bullshit. I don't think it's going to inhibit mTOR or your muscle growth or anything like that at all. I mean, for example, I consume 100 grams of frozen blueberries in a smoothie after my workout, and I have done that for like 5 years straight, and I've only seen results. I haven't seen any inhibition of results.
Yeah, it's so hard with, people will do one specific study on one specific food, 10 people, and then be like, oh, this must be bad. So it's just one of those things where you do have to do your own research in terms of almost using yourself as a guinea pig. Do these carbs affect me? Did I enjoy this protein? Did it make me feel bloated? All these little things, I guess they're almost like little check engine signs that your body's telling you, like, I didn't agree with that. Maybe don't do that all the time,
Yeah. I mean, that's a really good point to touch on, because there are so much, bullshit to give it a thing. But I mean, the reason it stands as bullshit is because it's probably worked for someone and then it didn't work for someone else. So then someone labeled it as bullshit. But then at the same time, you try something that, this high reputable scientist, PhD dude said that in this study that this tricep extension didn't grow your long head, but then you do overhead tricep extensions and you're like, holy shit, my triceps are blowing up. Same thing with certain foods. And it's just like, okay, well, who do you believe at the end of the day? It's like, yes, you should always use yourself as a guinea pig. You may respond completely different to what the science and opinion of others is out there.
Yeah, I think that's a really good, we're going into like supplementation now, but that's one thing that, and even when we talk about supplements now, it's that same sort of thing of, some are probably going to work better for others. Again, it probably goes back to your blood work more than anything. So if you guys aren't sure on like, what supplements do I need to fill these gaps or do this or do that, I strongly recommend contacting Liam, because he's going to be able to look at your blood work, and then you're not going to be waste $500 down the toilet just trying to buy every supplement under the sun because someone on TikTok's recommended it and his biceps have doubled in 12 weeks, which we all know he's just on gear. But they will try and market something to be like, this is the magic formula, and as soon as someone does that, they're talking shit.
Well, I can give you a perfect example of that one. So the presentation that I did this Monday with the coach there was this guy there, I forgot his name, but he was like a new coach coming on board. This dude was 100 kilos, had like jacked arms, all this stuff. And he mentioned one of the stories that I mentioned about, because he saw a GP, got his blood work done, and pretty much everything that I said sort of was the reverse of the information that he got sent. And intuitively, he kind of knew it was wrong, that what he was getting told. But you know, it was his creatine kinase levels because he was taking creatine and his stomach was upset from it. And he's like, the doctor's like, no, your kidneys are messed up. You can't be taking this and all this stuff. And, you know, all he had to do was switch from creatine monohydrate to creatine HCl pure. And then he's like, oh, my guts are fine now. And he's like, wait, I thought my kidneys were messed up this whole time. I'm like, bro, you're 100 kilos with lean muscle mass. Yeah, your stores are going to be high. It doesn't mean your kidneys are damaged.
Yeah, doctor told me that once too, and they said, yeah, we need to get tested. Like, and I was like, no, I'm just on creatine and I consume a lot of protein.
Yeah.
It was freaking out.
Yeah.
And so anyway, I
see
messaged Andy, and Andy was like, nah, bro, you're fine. Like,
That's-
he's like, what are
see
your
it all the
levels?
time,
And I told him, he's like, you're fine, man. It's literally because you weight train, and he must see nobody who, you know, weight trains consistently. So yeah, that's one thing that, yeah. And again, that will go back to pre, intra, post, creatine monohydrate, ideally 5 grams a day, every day. Would you find there's a time where, I know there's a lot of, you know, nuance now to people like, oh, I'll take it pre-workout, I'll take it immediately post-workout, I'll take it during.
I've got 2 stances on this. My method of like coffee, honey, all that stuff before the workout, if you do add 5 grams of creatine to that coffee, it does show to have benefits. But I've also seen the reverse, and this is one that I do because I've trained fed, actually having creatine just in my shake, my post-workout smoothie. I've seen that there is a bit better absorption when you have it post-workout.
Yeah, it's interesting because I have it post-workout just because I slam it in my shake. But yeah, like again, guys, it goes back to take 5 grams a day every day, and you will get the benefits no matter if it's, you know, pre, post, or.
Well, actually, we should
whatnot.
mention on that, I wouldn't advise having it at night because it has been shown to be very cognitively, like, sort of amplified.
Enhancing, yes.
So you don't really want to be taking creatine right before bed. Yeah.
Yeah, that would make sense. Yeah, probably first thing in the morning, pre or post workout. I'd say your 3 good ones. That's more because you'll just remember it as well.
Yeah, and you don't need to mix it with orange juice to absorb it better.
Yeah, just
if you remember
whack
that
it,
myth.
yeah, whack it in, whatever.
I think the myth behind that wasn't the sugar and the fructose. It was actually the vitamin C from orange juice, because vitamin C upregulates certain vitamin minerals and antioxidants. So, you know, that might just be why that myth came about.
Yeah, that's actually quite interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think, like, if we're going to talk about supplements, creatine obviously there, caffeine obviously we like to have, you know, what like depends on the person, obviously, on the dosage, but like, for example, to get any proper
different.
proper effect, would you say probably, depending on the person, again, goes probably from 100 milligrams all the way up to 500-600 for a dose to be dependent on improving your weight training.
What one standard coffee is 110 milligrams around there. Just have that 15 minutes before your training session and just see if there's a difference.
Yeah.
And most likely there will be. I mean, for certain days where, like, for example, I had Smith machine squats today, I had 2 coffees because I was like, yeah, it's going to hurt. And
amp yourself up a bit more.
Yeah, you amp yourself up. And, you know, at the stage of our lifting career, it's like we know how to train really intense to failure. We know how to drive past certain points. So it's like you're sort of a little bit nervous before those lifts because you're like, this is going to hurt. My heart rate's going to go to like 160. I'm going to be breathing heavy for 2 minutes. Like my face is going to go red, but you know it's on the program, so you got to do it. And it's like, yeah, just having that extra coffee this morning just gave me like this little mental, maybe placebo reward of like, okay, I've got another 110 milligrams of caffeine, so I'm amped. Let's go.
Yeah, should be able to perform.
Exactly.
Yeah. So
and
creatine.
Lo and behold, I did.
Yeah, creatine, caffeine. The only other one I would really mention is like an electrolyte, like we have talked about in the previous podcast anyway, and that's just more if you are dehydrated. So I would recommend potentially pre-workout or intra-workout having some electrolytes. Obviously, we know if we're dehydrated, muscle contraction goes down. If muscle contraction goes down, we're probably not going to be lifting as heavy as we were last week, which is the whole point of weight training if we want to start making changes as well. So there's your top 3, guys. We've got those 3 supplements for you as well. Anything else to add?
I'd probably recommend magnesium glycinate post-workout. Can just really help just shift your body back to that parasympathetic, get the healing process going, and also just for nutrient absorption as well. Just calming everything down. Yeah,
I think that's a really good one to, like I said, just calm things down that little bit. A lot of people are on edge these days as it is. So even calming down before they, might work out and then go back to the office, might put them in a bit of a better headspace.
That's what I mean. Like, you're going from a really stressed state when you're training. It is a stress on the body, and then you need to focus on shifting yourself into a calm state as much as possible. Even though your perspective in the external world, like if you go straight back to the office, take calls, all that stuff, isn't calming, you need to get your body and your digestive tract into a calming state. So supplementally with magnesium, that can really help. I mean, as we mentioned before though, carbohydrates or like really do that as well. They shift the body into the parasympathetic. So yes, if you've got some stresses going on straight away, if you've got to go straight to work for the next 8 hours after your workout, just make sure you're getting in some form of carbohydrates and magnesium glycinate. We probably wouldn't recommend caffeine post-workout.
Yeah, it's funny. I've seen some research even lately that I think said something about caffeine post-workout and how it was, almost fine. Not so much beneficial, but like no worse than, having it before or whatever in terms of like, doing anything bad.
Yeah.
So it was like, you can still have a coffee. I can't remember what.
I was going to say, like, what source of caffeine though? Was it the coffee? Because there's an antioxidant blood thinning effect like that, or was it, you can't have a caffeinated energy drink?
Good question.
Because
I think it was coffee.
They will work differently. Like
Yeah.
coffee, for those that don't know, we harp on this all the time, coffee actually has a shit ton of health benefits. But if you're drinking the white monster
potentially
post-workout, it's probably not going to work the same way.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was coffee. So like I said, there's some unique benefits there compared to, like I said, smacking a white monster or some pre-workout again, it's a pre-workout, like you wouldn't have it post-workout. So it's kind of in the name, makes a bit of sense. But I hope you've enjoyed the episode, guys. Again, we've talked pre, post, intra-workout training, how to get the most out of that. Again, if you guys have any questions, our social links are down below, so feel free to contact either of us. But until then, guys, we will see you in the next episode.
Thanks, guys.